People like you were made to serve. That is the first sentence she spits out. No introduction. No grace. Just venom disguised as casual conversation. And the room freezes. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss out channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more jaw-dropping stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's get back to our main character. People like you were made to serve. That is the first sentence she spits out. No introduction. No grace. Just venom disguised as casual conversation. And the room freezes. Imagine being there, polished marble floors, chandeliers humming with a low electric buzz, a dozen forks resting mid-air as every guest wonders if they actually heard what they just heard. But they did. Victoria Langford made sure of it. She wanted the words to travel. Her voice carries, sharp as glass, really, darling, you must admit it. Cooking for the powerful, it's noble in its own little way. But it is service. And some of us were born to be served. Don't you agree? Now, I want you to sit with that for a moment. Because here is a woman who has never worked a day in her life, speaking to a man who has clawed his way through kitchens hot enough to blister skin, who has trained in Paris, who has bled for his craft. And yet, to her, he is nothing more than the help. This is Andre Carter's introduction to the Langford estate. Not applause. Not recognition. Just the sting of centuries of prejudice, dressed up in designer silk and diamonds. Have you ever heard a silence so heavy it feels like it might break the ceiling? That's what follows her words. You could measure it, 5 seconds, maybe 6, where the only sound is a nervous cough, the shuffle of a chair leg dragged too quickly against the floor. And then, Andre speaks. His voice is calm. Steady. It is the kind of voice that carries the weight of someone who has been underestimated 1,000 times before and has learned that dignity is louder than anger. I enjoy creating experiences that bring people together, he says. Simple. Almost too simple. And yet, it slices through the room in its own way. But Victoria, oh, Victoria doesn't let it end there. Her laugh cuts in, brittle, like ice snapping in water. Bring people together? My dear, you carry trays. You season food. Let's not pretend it's art. You're just here to make sure the rest of us are comfortable. And with that, the whole room shifts. Not a word, not an objection, just that ugly complicity of silence. You know the kind. Where no one wants to be the one to speak up. Where the weight of money, status, and hierarchy forces even good people to shrink in their seats. Andre doesn't shrink. But he doesn't fight, either. He lets her words hang. Because here's the thing, silence, when wielded right, can be more dangerous than fury. Now, before I take you forward, before we arrive at the grand presidential banquet hall, with cameras flashing and names announced to the world, let me take you back. Because you need to understand exactly who Andre Carter is, and why Victoria Langford's arrogance will cost her everything. Andre grew up where opportunity wasn't handed out, it had to be carved out, with persistence and faith. His mother was a nurse who came home with aching feet, his father a bus driver who knew every street corner by heart. Their kitchen wasn't glamorous, but it was alive, alive with smells, with laughter, with the unspoken rule that no matter how little they had, they shared it with pride. By 12, Andre was already experimenting with spices, by 16 he was reading French cookbooks from the library, pronouncing words he barely understood but tasting them as if they were scripture. Paris was not just a dream, it was the proving ground he knew he had to reach. And when he got there, the kitchens didn't welcome him. They questioned him. They doubted him. They whispered about the American kid, about the black boy in whites. He answered them with skill. Knife strokes as precise as clockwork. Flavors layered so carefully that even the harshest critic couldn't deny the mastery. That determination earned him a Michelin star. That same determination caught the attention of the White House. By 32, he wasn't just a chef. He was the chef. The executive chef. The man responsible for shaping the meals that would represent America to kings, queens, and presidents. But none of that mattered to Victoria Langford on the night of the estate dinner. To her, he was invisible power, unseen, unvalued, reduced to a uniform. So she kept going. During the second course, she waves him over, speaking loudly enough for the table to hear, "No spice, I hope? I simply can't stand those heavy flavors. Some cultures never learn restraint. Did you hear that? Not just dismissal. Not just arrogance. But a blade of prejudice slipped between her words, meant to wound without ever naming the wound." Andre answers calmly again, "The flavors are balanced to highlight the ingredients." Balanced. Imagine the restraint it takes to choose that word when the air itself is poisoned with imbalance. But Victoria smirks. "Balanced, you say? We'll see." And so it builds. Course after course. Comment after comment. Every word she speaks digs her hole deeper, even as she believes she's standing taller. Then comes dessert. The final blow. She leans back in her chair, her voice dripping with mock concern. "Tell me, young man. Don't you ever wonder what your life could have been, if you had aimed higher? If you hadn't settled for carrying trays? I suppose greatness isn't for everyone." That's when the room itself betrays her. Because this time, no one coughs. No one shifts. No one even pretends to agree. Every guest knows the line has been crossed. Every guest knows they are witnessing cruelty dressed up as conversation. And Andre? He simply bows his head, collects the plates, and leaves the room. Now, you might think that's defeat. That's surrender. But it isn't. Because in that moment, Andre Carter decides something. He doesn't need to defend himself here. Not in Victoria Langford's dining hall. Not before her circle of enablers. His stage will be larger. His audience, far greater. His vindication, public, undeniable, permanent. And when it comes, it won't just expose her words. It will expose her. In just a matter of days, Victoria Langford will find herself seated again, this time in the presidential banquet hall, surrounded not by real estate magnates and socialites, but by world leaders, diplomats, and cameras broadcasting every word, every name, every title. And when Andre Carter is introduced, not as a caterer, not as the help, but as Executive Chef Andre Carter of the United States White House, her silence will be deafening. This is the story of how arrogance collapses under the weight of truth. This is the story of how dignity, patience, and mastery turned humiliation into justice. And it begins with that one line she should never have spoken. "People like you were made to serve." If this beginning moved you, don't stop here, the real storm is only starting. Share this audio with someone who needs to hear the weight of these words, and keep listening, because what happens next will leave you breathless. Humiliation doesn't always come in one strike. Sometimes it builds, layer upon layer, word after word, until it wraps around a room like smoke. That's what happens at the Langford estate. Victoria has already delivered her first blows. People like you were made to serve. Cooking isn't art, it's comfort. Greatness isn't for everyone. But arrogance never stops where it should. Arrogance always believes there's more room to wound. So the evening stretches on, and with each course she finds a new angle, a new jab. And the guests, caught between their discomfort and their desire to stay in her favor, do what the privileged always do, they say nothing. That silence is as loud as her cruelty. The third course arrives, braised lamb, delicate, tender, plated with precision that borders on poetry. Andre presents it quietly, announcing the herbs and reductions, then stepping back. And Victoria, lifting her fork with the confidence of a queen inspecting tribute, speaks again. "Oh dear. Lamb. You know, I've always thought it rather common. A peasant's dish dressed up with sauces." The word peasant lands hard. It doesn't just insult the food. It insults him. It reduces his art, his years of training, his Parisian discipline, to something beneath her standards. A man across the table clears his throat, attempting a smile. Well, Victoria, I thought the presentation was. But she cuts him off. Presentation, perhaps. But at the end of the day, it's lamb. And just like that, the defense dies in his throat. André doesn't answer. He never does. His silence is not weakness. It's calculation. Each insult she hurls becomes a weight, not on him, but on her. She doesn't know it yet, but she's building her own gallows, word by word. The night wears on. Glasses clink. Conversations attempt to restart. But every time the air steadies, Victoria pulls him back into the spotlight. During the salad course, she waves her fork. I trust the greens were washed thoroughly. I've heard such stories about, well, kitchens like yours. Corners cut, hygiene ignored. I'd hate to fall ill from negligence. There's a stir at the table. Someone shifts in their chair. A nervous laugh echoes from the far side, brittle and weak. André bows slightly. We maintain the highest standards of safety. But she isn't listening. She never is. She turns her head, her voice pitched high enough for the table. My husband always says, when you outsource these things, you take a risk. You never quite know who's handling your food, do you? Outsource. Risk. The words clang like chains. And still, no one calls her out. Have you ever been in a room where the silence itself feels complicit? Where every withheld word is another betrayal? That's the Langford estate tonight. By the fourth course, the wine has loosened tongues. A man to Victoria's right chuckles and joins in. I will say, the portions are modest. I thought Americans were known for, excess. Victoria smirks. Perhaps our chef has a European complex. Parisian training, was it? How amusing. She draws out the word chef like it's an insult. André responds with nothing but a polite nod. But inside, he's filing each remark away. Because he knows what's coming. And he knows that when the truth arrives, these words will echo louder than applause. Later, when the fish course arrives, she leans forward with mock curiosity. Tell me, young man. Do you ever actually dine at the kinds of places you cook for? Or is it all theory for you? Recipes memorized, flavors borrowed, experiences secondhand? It's not just an insult. It's an attempt to strip him of authority, to paint him as an imitator in a world he has mastered. André answers softly, every plate I serve is built on lived experience. But she waves him off, already talking over him. Yes, yes. That's what they all say. And there it is, that word again, they. Not chefs. Not artists. They. The room shifts once more. Guests exchange glances. Some with discomfort, some with quiet approval, most with fear of being the next target. Have you ever heard a person dig their own grave with words? You're hearing it now. By dessert, the air is taut. The insults have stretched thin across hours, and even those who came for nothing more than business and wine feel the heaviness. She delivers her final blow casually, as though it's nothing more than a passing observation. My dear, you carry yourself well, I'll grant you that. But don't mistake composure for importance. At the end of the day, when this evening is over, we'll forget your name. That's the way of it, isn't it? Service ends when the plates are cleared. Imagine that. A man whose name will soon be broadcast across the nation, reduced in this moment to someone forgettable. André doesn't argue. He doesn't correct her. He simply collects the last plate and disappears into the kitchen. But the night isn't over. Not for Victoria. Because whispers travel. Guests murmur. A woman at the far end leans to her companion, her voice low. Was that too far? Her companion whispers back, she always goes too far. And then the murmurs spread. Like ripples on water, quiet but unstoppable. A laugh here, a hushed comment there. None loud enough for Victoria to hear, but all carrying the same undertone: she has revealed too much of herself. Arrogance always thinks it is untouchable. But arrogance never sees the cracks forming in its own reflection. Now, let me tell you why this matters. Because only days later, Victoria Langford will find herself in a room she cannot control. She will sit in the presidential banquet hall, where every word is scripted, every detail orchestrated, every title spoken aloud for the world to hear. And when the announcer's voice rings out, Executive Chef Andre Carter, White House, she will realize that every insult she spoke in private has become her own undoing. But tonight, at the Langford estate, she doesn't know that yet. Tonight she believes she has won. She believes she has diminished him. She believes her laughter, her sneers, her arrogance have reduced him to the help. She doesn't understand that silence is not defeat. Silence is preparation. Silence is strategy. Silence is power held back, waiting for the right moment to be unleashed. And Andre Carter has been patient his entire life. That patience will turn this night of humiliation into the stage for her downfall. Because what Victoria Langford doesn't realize is that every person in that dining room will remember her words. Every whispered remark, every uncomfortable glance, every nervous laugh, they will all return to her when the truth comes crashing down. And when it does, there will be no hiding. Not behind her husband's fortune. Not behind her social circles. Not even behind the silence of the people she once cowed into submission. Her words will echo louder than any defense she can muster. This is the rise of tension, the tightening of the rope she has tied around her own neck. And when the reveal comes, when the world hears the name she dismissed, the silence that follows will not protect her. It will condemn her. If you felt the pressure rising in this story, imagine what comes when the truth finally breaks through. Drop a comment with the moment you felt the tension snap, and keep listening. The reveal is about to change everything. The Langford estate dinner ends in silence. Plates cleared. Guests dismissed. Victoria Langford laughing, satisfied with herself. She believes she has triumphed, that her words have reduced Andre Carter to nothing. But arrogance has a short memory. Arrogance never imagines consequences. And consequences have a way of arriving when least expected. 3 days later, the presidential banquet hall hums with anticipation. It is not just a dinner, it is the dinner. A state event broadcast across networks, live-streamed online, dissected by journalists in real time. Foreign dignitaries, ambassadors, heads of state, all gathered beneath vaulted ceilings and polished chandeliers. Every detail has been rehearsed, every chair placement measured to the inch. The air itself feels charged, as though history might happen at any moment. Victoria Langford enters on her husband's arm, her voice floating above the crowd. She thrives here, among cameras, among power. Her diamonds catch the light, her smile rehearsed, her confidence absolute. She doesn't notice him at first. Why would she? To her, Andre Carter is just the help. Forgettable. Invisible. She doesn't see him moving through the room, checking every detail with quiet authority. She doesn't realize that every server answers to him, that every plate being prepared in the kitchen comes from his vision. Not yet. But she will. Because when the orchestra falls silent, when the announcer's voice cuts through the room, when the formal introductions begin, her world starts to crack. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, it is my honor to present the architect of this evening's culinary experience, Executive Chef Andre Carter of the White House. Silence. The kind of silence that feels alive. The kind of silence where you can almost hear people turning their heads. Andre steps forward, calm, steady. His name echoes again, louder this time, as cameras flash. Executive Chef Andre Carter. And Victoria Langford's breath catches. Her husband shifts beside her, muttering, "Isn't that the—" "Yes," she whispers, her voice trembling for the first time all evening. "It's him." Every insult she spoke at her estate dinner replays in her head. Every word, made to serve, common, forgettable, returns like a blade twisting in her chest. Because now the room sees him not as she painted him, but as he truly is. A man who carries one of the most prestigious titles in the nation. A man whose art is being celebrated in front of world leaders. A man whose dignity outshines every diamond she wears. Andre doesn't look at her. Not yet. He addresses the room, his voice calm but commanding. Tonight's menu reflects the diversity of our nation and the spirit of unity we share with our honored guests. It is my privilege to serve you. Applause swells. Real, thunderous applause. The kind that shakes the floor, that leaves no room for doubt about who holds power here. Victoria claps stiffly, her hands trembling. She feels the weight of eyes shifting toward her, as though the entire room knows what she has done, even though no one has spoken of it yet. But whispers travel. They always do. A woman across the table leans to her companion, her voice low but sharp. Isn't that the man she insulted at her dinner? The companion nods. It is. I was there. And just like that, the murmurs begin. Andre continues with composure, introducing each course with care, speaking of history, culture, and artistry. Every word he speaks is another crack in the mask Victoria wears. And then, the moment comes. Between courses, the master of ceremonies reads from the official program. Our executive chef, Andre Carter, trained in Paris, earned his first Michelin star at 27, and now serves as the youngest executive chef in White House history. The words land heavy. They echo louder than any accusation. Victoria grips her glass so tightly her knuckles whiten. She can't drink. She can barely breathe. Because she knows, everyone knows, the truth of her arrogance now. And then, Andre does something unexpected. He pauses. Looks across the room. His eyes find hers. For the first time, he addresses her directly, though his words are meant for all. Hospitality is more than service. It is respect. It is dignity. It is the belief that every person at the table deserves honor, regardless of where they come from or who they are. That is what tonight represents. The applause that follows is different this time. Louder. Sharper. The kind of applause that feels like judgment disguised as praise. And Victoria knows, every clap is a reminder. Every cheer is another nail in the coffin of her reputation. Because the truth is out. Not through confrontation. Not through anger. But through exposure. The man she dismissed as a servant is revealed before the world as a master. The whispers spread. Did you hear what she said to him? I can't believe she didn't know. Imagine the arrogance. Phones buzz under the table. Messages fly. Social media lights up with his name. Clips of his introduction go viral within minutes, hashtags forming, comments pouring in. And soon, so do the recordings. Because guests at the Langford estate had been listening. Some had recorded. And now, in the age of instant sharing, her words are replayed for the world to hear. People like you were made to serve. Some cultures never learn restraint. At the end of the day, we'll forget your name. Her voice. Her cruelty. Her arrogance. All exposed. And in contrast, Andre's dignity shines brighter. His calm responses, his measured silence, his grace under fire, they become the story. Headlines flash. Executive Chef Andre Carter humiliated at his state dinner, now celebrated on global stage. Billionaire's wife exposed for racial insults, chef's dignity steals spotlight. Victoria sits frozen, the room closing in on her. Every laugh, every whisper, every insult she threw now plays back in her ears, louder than the applause surrounding Andre. And there is no escape. Because the reveal has happened. The world knows who he is. And by extension, the world now knows who she is. A woman whose arrogance could not hide her prejudice. A woman who mistook silence for weakness. A woman who believed herself untouchable, until the truth touched her in the most public way possible. Andre doesn't gloat. He doesn't need to. His silence, his dignity, his presence are enough. And as the evening continues, one truth becomes clear: Victoria Langford has not just lost control of the narrative, she has become the narrative. Her downfall has begun. And it started the moment the announcer said his name. Have you ever heard a single sentence rewrite a whole story? That's what just happened. Share this with someone who understands how powerful truth can be, and stay with me, the consequences are about to shake lives and legacies. The banquet ended with applause that would echo for weeks. Andre Carter left the hall with his head high, not because he had humiliated Victoria Langford, but because he hadn't needed to. The truth revealed itself. His dignity became his defense, and her arrogance became her indictment. But for Victoria, the night never ended. It followed her home, into the silent halls of her estate. It followed her onto the screens of every phone, every laptop, every television. She turned off devices, but the world does not switch off. Not anymore. The first sting came the morning after. Headlines screamed her name, not for her wealth, not for her influence, but for her cruelty. Victoria Langford exposed, White House chef target of racial taunts at private dinner. Langford scandal, arrogance meets consequence. Executive chef Andre Carter becomes symbol of grace amid discrimination. Clips of her voice replayed endlessly. Not edited, not manipulated, her actual words, caught on recordings. People like you were made to serve. At the end of the day, we'll forget your name. And people listened. They listened in outrage, in disbelief, in fury. Social media platforms became battlefields. Hashtags trended worldwide. Hashtag respect Andre Carter. Hashtag Langford scandal. Hashtag made to serve. The last one cut deepest. Made to serve, her words twisted into a weapon she had forged herself, now turned against her. Memes spread faster than statements. Protesters held signs outside Langford Corporation offices, "We are not made to serve." The financial world responded quickly. Markets are built on trust, and trust collapses faster than stone towers when reputation crumbles. The Langford Corporation stock price dropped 12% in one day. Investors pulled out. Partnerships dissolved. Companies that once begged for her endorsement now scrambled to distance themselves. Press releases appeared in rapid succession. "We categorically denounce the statements made by Mrs. Langford and will no longer maintain ties with the Langford Corporation. 1. Our collaboration with the Langford family is terminated effective immediately. 2. Respect is non-negotiable. We stand with Chef Carter. 3. And then came the sponsors. Luxury brands, fashion houses, philanthropic foundations, all severed ties. One after another, like dominoes. Her name, once a brand of prestige, became toxic. Victoria's husband, Richard Langford, tried to contain the damage. But even his statements rang hollow. "My wife's comments were taken out of context," he said. The words backfired. Context wasn't the issue, the recordings were. People heard her venom. People felt it. The board of directors convened an emergency session. For hours, they debated survival. When the meeting ended, Richard emerged pale, his voice low. "We must step back from leadership." It was a polite phrase for exile. Victoria lost her board seat. Richard surrendered his chairmanship. Their empire, built on decades of calculated influence, slipped through their fingers in a week. But the external collapse was nothing compared to the private unraveling. Inside the estate, silence grew heavy. Staff resigned one by one, unwilling to serve in a house where respect had rotted. Friends stopped calling. Invitations disappeared. Even charities she had once chaired released statements rejecting her presence. Her name had become a scar. And Andre Carter? He never gloated. He never raised his voice. Instead, he stood as a symbol of what dignity can endure. Interviews requested his presence, he declined most, speaking rarely, carefully. But when he did, his words carried weight. "I was insulted, yes. But the story isn't about me. It's about the thousands who face worse every day without cameras, without headlines. If my silence that night has meaning, let it be this: dignity outlasts arrogance. Those words replayed as widely as Victoria's insults. They became a mantra. Schools quoted him. Leaders referenced him. Strangers tweeted them. He became more than a chef, he became a symbol. A man whose strength lay not in retaliation, but in restraint. Victoria, meanwhile, watched from behind closed curtains. The estate that once hosted lavish galas became a fortress of shame. She couldn't walk the streets without whispers. She couldn't step into a restaurant without phones lifting to record her. The humiliation spread like fire. Not because people loved Andre's victory, but because they despised her arrogance. The estate dinner resurfaced in detail. Guests who had once laughed nervously at her words now spoke freely, giving interviews, confirming every insult. A senator's wife said, "We thought it was cruel, but no one wanted to challenge her then. Now, I regret staying silent." Even those who once shielded her began offering their apologies, not to her, but to Andre. And when the White House issued its own statement, the scandal reached its final height. "We stand with Executive Chef Andre Carter, whose excellence reflects the values of this administration and this nation. Discrimination has no place at any table." The president's words sealed her fate. There was no return. But consequences are not just public, they are private. Inside her home, Victoria faced Richard's fury. "Do you realize what you've done?" he hissed one night, slamming papers onto the marble counter. "Do you understand the billions lost? The humiliation? The empire we built, gone, because of your mouth." She wanted to argue. To defend herself. But for once, no words came. Every excuse had been stripped away by recordings, by headlines, by the undeniable evidence of her own voice. She whispered, "I didn't think." "No," he cut her off, his voice sharp. "You never think. You belittle. You destroy. And now you've destroyed us." The marriage fractured under the weight of blame and silence. Separate wings of the estate became separate lives. And Victoria? She sat alone at night, replaying Andre's words from the banquet. Hospitality is respect. Dignity. Honor. They haunted her. Not because she believed them, but because the world did. She tried to fight back. Released statements. Claimed her words were misunderstood. Even attempted a tearful television interview, her voice cracking with rehearsed remorse. But the public saw through it. "You're not sorry," one commentator said. "You're sorry you were caught." The interview collapsed under scrutiny. Her tears became memes. Her apology became another punchline. And the scandal, far from fading, deepened. Documentaries were announced. Podcasters dissected her downfall. Late-night hosts mocked her arrogance nightly. Her name became synonymous with hubris. With cruelty. With consequence. Meanwhile, Andre Carter thrived. Not through ambition, but through recognition he had never sought. Culinary schools invited him to speak. Human rights organizations honored him. He was not just a chef now, he was a figure of respect, a living example of grace under fire. And Victoria watched, powerless, as his light grew brighter while hers disappeared. For the first time in her life, she was irrelevant. Not feared. Not admired. Just, forgotten. But perhaps the greatest consequence was this: she had tried to make him invisible. To erase him with her words. And in the end, it was she who disappeared. Arrogance collapsed, but the echoes keep spreading. If you believe in accountability, share this audio forward, and don't step away now, because the epilogue will show how dignity leaves a lasting mark long after the noise fades. 6 months pass. Seasons change, but the memory of that night in the presidential banquet hall has not faded. It echoes still, in the halls of power, in classrooms, in conversations between strangers. The scandal became more than gossip. It became a mirror. A reminder of what arrogance sounds like, and what dignity can endure. Andre Carter continues his work in the White House kitchen. For him, life remains rooted in discipline, menus carefully designed, flavors balanced, staff guided with calm authority. He does not chase headlines. He does not seek fame. Yet fame finds him, again and again. Culinary institutes invite him to speak, not only about cooking but about leadership, about dignity, about perseverance. He accepts sparingly, but when he does, the words ripple. Young chefs hang on his every sentence. Respect, he tells them, is the first ingredient. Without it, nothing else matters. International leaders request him by name when visiting the White House. Ambassadors speak of his craft as cultural diplomacy, a quiet but powerful bridge between nations. A meal, André reminds them, is more than food, it is a message. And across the country, his story inspires conversations far beyond kitchens. Civil rights groups invoke his example. Podcasts analyze his calm in the face of insult. Parents tell their children about the chef who refused to bend to arrogance. André Carter becomes more than an executive chef. He becomes a living reminder that dignity is not passive, it is active, powerful, resilient. And what of Victoria Langford? 6 months after the scandal, her name no longer leads headlines. She is not trending, not quoted, not invited. The silence around her is deafening. Once she defined rooms by her presence, now, her absence defines her. The Langford Corporation survived, but without her or her husband at the helm. New leadership issued sweeping reforms, including mandatory diversity and ethics training, public commitments to equality, and new board members from communities once excluded. The corporation scrambled to shed the stain of her arrogance, but the memory remains, carved into its reputation. As for Victoria herself, whispers circulate. Some say she fled to Europe, retreating into anonymity. Others claim she remains at the estate, curtains drawn, avoiding cameras, avoiding questions, avoiding the world. What is certain is this: she no longer wields power. The empire she once controlled with her words has slipped beyond her grasp. Her legacy is not wealth, not influence, but a cautionary tale. She becomes a case study in business schools, her downfall dissected as a warning: arrogance can bankrupt even the untouchable. But for André, her name holds no power. He rarely speaks of her, and when he does, it is only in passing. Some stories, he says, are not about the villain. They are about the lesson. And the lesson spreads. Schools teach it. Churches preach it. Companies reference it when drafting codes of conduct. André's story becomes folklore, a modern parable of humility defeating hubris, of silence defeating cruelty, of truth defeating lies. And then, on a crisp autumn afternoon, the White House honors him formally. Not in a quiet kitchen, not in the bustle of preparation, but in the East Room, beneath chandeliers that have witnessed centuries of history. The president himself stands before the crowd. Tonight, the president says, we honor not only culinary excellence, but character. Executive Chef André Carter represents the best of who we are. His meals unite nations, but his dignity unites us here at home. In moments of insult, he chose silence. In moments of cruelty, he chose grace. And in doing so, he taught us all that true strength is not in power, but in restraint. The applause is thunderous. André bows his head slightly, accepting the medal placed around his neck. His hands, scarred from years of knives and heat, rest calmly at his sides. He does not smile widely or raise his arms in triumph. Instead, he whispers a simple, thank you. That word, soft, humble, sincere, reaches farther than any speech. And as the applause dies down, André reflects silently. He does not think of Victoria. He thinks of his mother, who worked double shifts so he could attend culinary school. He thinks of his neighborhood, where children laughed on cracked sidewalks, dreaming of futures they were told they couldn't have. He thinks of Paris, of long nights in kitchens where no one believed the quiet black boy from America would last. And he thinks of the truth: dignity, once defended, cannot be taken away. The room fills with voices, conversations, laughter. But one thing lingers long after, the lesson of that scandal. The sound of arrogance collapsing. The power of grace enduring. Months later, when people speak of the Langford affair, they do not speak of Victoria's cruelty. They speak of Andre's calm. When they remember the banquet, they do not recall her venom. They recall his silence, and how that silence spoke louder than her insults ever could. And perhaps that is the greatest consequence of all: history does not remember the arrogance. It remembers the dignity that outlasted it. So let this story end where it began, not with insult, but with truth. Hospitality is respect. Dignity is strength. And arrogance? Arrogance always collapses under the weight of its own voice. If you are listening to this, remember, you carry dignity with you. No one can strip it from you. Not a billionaire, not a boardroom, not a cruel voice at a dinner table. Dignity belongs to you. Hold it. Protect it. Live it. And when arrogance tries to speak louder, let your silence be the answer. Because silence, when rooted in dignity, can echo forever. The story ends here, but the lesson doesn't. If Andre's dignity inspired you, let it guide your own steps. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it, follow for more, and remember, your silence can be powerful, but your voice can change the world.